All right, well, today is a very, very special day here at Bridgepoint. It is Above and Beyond Sunday. It's the one day we set aside every year. We look back at all God has done this past year. We look forward to what he's going to do in the year to come. And as a response, in just a few minutes, we are going to be giving offerings above and beyond our normal tithes and offerings to support the work that God is doing. So we've been asking you for 6 weeks now to be thinking and praying. Hopefully you have one of these red envelopes. This is going to be very important to have. If you do not, we have our amazing usher team has these to pass out. So if you need one, go ahead and raise your hand. These are going to be important in the coming moments. As they are passing that out, I know if you're, checking Bridgepoint out, you're not even sure this is where you want to call home. You're thinking, great, I showed up on Giving Sunday. You're trying to figure out how can I fake some kind of emergency to go out the back. And trust me, we've all been there before. I just want to put your mind at ease. If you're still exploring Bridgepoint in faith, there is no expectation for you to do anything at all this morning. And honestly, I think it's great that you're here because you can learn a lot about a church based on what they do with their finances. So if nothing else, you're really going to get to see the heart of our church on display this morning. Not only is it Above and Beyond Sunday, though, it's also the second Sunday of the Advent season. So at Bridgepoint, this whole year, we've been following the church calendar. So we've walked through the life and ministry of Jesus, through his death and resurrection, the growth of the early church. We looked at the beginning of the story of the Bible, the end of the story of the Bible. And here, as we close out the year, we're back where it all began. We're anticipating the birth of Jesus. Now, typically, we call this season the Christmas season, and not to be all Bible nerd on you, but technically, that's not correct, because Christmas starts on December 25th. That's Christmas Day, and it's followed with a 12-day celebration of Jesus' arrival. Technically, we are in the season of Advent, which is really a season of waiting for the birth of Jesus. It has its roots in the Old Testament because the prophets tell God's people, hey, God is coming. He's going to rescue you. There's a Savior. Salvation is near. And then God seemingly goes silent for over 400 years. There's a period of waiting for God to show up and do what he promised he would do. Now, what's interesting to me is each week you've probably noticed there's a different theme in Advent. There's hope, there's peace, there's joy. This is the week of peace. And I don't know if you've ever had a season of waiting in your life. There are a lot of emotions that go in a season of waiting, but usually peace is not one of those for me. A lot of times it's stress, worry, fear, anxiety, doubt. In fact, one of those seasons for me happened this time a year ago. Some of you may know I have a condition called ulcerative colitis. So I have ulcers in my intestines. And so for the last 10 years, I've been able to manage this without medication, just with lifestyle, diet, trying to be a genuinely healthy person. But at the end of last year, I started to have the beginning symptoms of a flare. So I talked to my general practitioner and they said, Matt, you haven't been to the GI doctor in over a decade. You need to go. They're going to want to check you out. And so I go, and of course they say, we're going to need to schedule a colonoscopy. Now, let me alleviate your fears. This is not a colonoscopy story, okay? But I'm just kind of setting the scene for us here. In prep for that, you got to do different things like blood work, and they want to scan your liver because people with UC have higher rates of non-alcoholic cirrhosis of the liver. So I'm kind of going through the motions. I actually planned my colonoscopy for Christmas Eve morning, a decision my wife said was the stupidest ever. But I was we hit our deductible. We got to get it before the end of the year, I think it was a wise financial decision. But a couple weeks before Christmas, I get a phone call. And by the way, when your doctor calls you, that's never to say, hey, just want to let you know everything's fine. It said, hey, on your liver scan, there's a mass of some type, and we're concerned that it might be the beginnings of cirrhosis. And so we need you to schedule this other higher tech ultrasound. So I'm like, all right, when can we do it? We can do it Christmas Day for all I care. Let's just get it on. Let's get it done with. And they said, well, unfortunately, we're booked until January. And so here I am. I've got to spend about 3 to 4 weeks now just thinking, wondering, letting my mind play games with me. And we're in this season of Christmas that's supposed to be full of joy and hope. And on the outside, I'm trying to keep it together. But there were moments where I'm like, okay, what if I have cirrhosis? What if I'm going to need a transplant? How is this going to impact our family? What is this financially going to look like? There's a lot of questions that go into that. Now, to put your mind at ease, when I went back in January, they do the scan. I asked them, hey, when is my results going to come back? It'll be a few days. You better believe every few hours I'm on that online portal, refreshing. The scans came back and said, everything's clean, everything's fine, you're good to go. So that's the moment I felt peace. That's the moment I felt hope for the future. But in the waiting, there was a lot of fear, stress, and worry. And I wonder how many of us can relate to that. Maybe for you, it wasn't some kind of test results you were waiting on. Maybe for you, it was a job that you really desperately needed and you haven't heard back yet. Maybe for you, it's like desperately needing that tax refund so you can fix up your car or pay off your debt. Maybe you've been in counseling for your mental health. You're trying to save your marriage and you're doing all the work, but you haven't seen any dividends yet. And so you find yourself this morning in the waiting. And the question is, how can we go ahead and have peace even in the waiting? To answer that, I want us to turn to a non-traditional Advent passage, John chapter 12. If you have your Bibles, turn to John chapter 12. As you turn there, though, I've got to explain what happens in John chapter 11, because that is the backstory for what happens in John chapter 12. At the beginning of chapter 11, Jesus has finally ticked off the Pharisees for the last time. They're ready to kill him. So Jesus has to leave town. He leaves Jerusalem. He goes into hiding. While he's in hiding, his friends, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, their brother and two sisters, they go back home to Bethany. While they're in Bethany, Lazarus gets sick. And whatever they try doesn't seem to be helping. In fact, Lazarus' condition goes from bad to worse to the point they think he's going to die. So Mary and Martha do the only thing they can think to do. They send word to Jesus. See, I imagine that they had at least heard from Jesus' ministry that there were blind people that he gave their sight back to. There were people who were paralyzed. He said, get up, take your mat, and walk, and they did. There were demon-possessed people who found freedom. If anyone can show up and fix this desperate situation, it's going to be Jesus. Have you ever found yourself in a spot where there was nowhere else to turn, and so you cried out, and Jesus, I need you to show up to do what only you can do? And there's this really weird verse in chapter 11. It said, Jesus loved Mary and Martha, and then he waited. See, I would think if he loved Mary and Martha, he would drop everything. He would go there immediately. I've got to get there to save Lazarus. Now, for a moment, I want you to put yourself in Mary and Martha's shoes, particularly Mary for our discussion this morning. They're sitting there. They've seen their brother's condition worsen. They've sent word to Jesus. We know Jesus. We're friends with him. We've seen him do this time and time again. Surely he will show up. But as the hours pass, as the days pass, as Lazarus gets sicker and sicker, I wonder if their hearts get full of anguish, of heartache, of doubt. Is Jesus actually going to show up? He's been faithful to us before, but will he be faithful to us now? And I wonder what kind of emotions they experienced when Lazarus breathed his final breath and died. When they had to take his body and wrap it in the grave clothes. They had to put him in the tomb. What were they feeling when they get word that Jesus finally showed up? Only he showed up too late. Well, we know that Martha hears Jesus is in town, so she goes out to greet him. She says, Jesus, if you had been here, none of this would have happened. And Jesus says, listen, I'm telling you, the story's not going to end in death. Your brother is going to rise again. Now, Jesus is speaking plainly, but I don't blame Martha for not understanding what he's saying. Because her expectation is probably not, hey, even though he's dead, you can still bring him back to life. And so what does she do? She spiritualizes it. Yes, Jesus, I know you're trying to offer comfort. I know we'll be together one day in the resurrection, but that doesn't help me in the present moment now. I don't know if you've ever experienced any kind of pain or loss. Christians, we love people, right? And we don't want to see them suffer or in pain. And sometimes even with a good heart, we do stupid stuff. We tell people who are hurting, hey, God's got a plan. Hey, you're going to see them again one day. By the way, those are true things, but sometimes that's not what people need to hear in the moment, right? You ever hear that phrase before? Intellect is knowing that tomato is a fruit, but wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad, right? There are true things. But just because something's true does not mean that those are the words that need to be spoken in the moment. Does not mean to be the advice that is handed out. Sometimes what we need is we just need people to sit and to comfort us. She's saying, Jesus, I understand you're trying to give me hope for tomorrow, but that doesn't fix my pain today. And noticeably absent from this conversation is Mary. Where's Mary when all this is going down? She's back at her house. Why is she back at her house? Well, I imagine it's because she's frustrated. Jesus, we sent word to you. We gave you plenty of time to get here, and you waited. And when you finally showed up, now it's too late. Jesus, I thought I could count on you. I thought I could depend on you. I thought you cared about me. Jesus, where were you? She doesn't even want to see him, so she remains in hiding. It's this interesting thing because I think all of us, when we experience discouragement and disappointment in life, we tend to go in hiding. Right? You ever stub your toe and your spouse is like, what's wrong? You're like, no one talk to me. Just leave me alone. Let me suffer through my pain. This is what happens. We get hurt by a church, and so we say we can't be a part of a community anymore. Jesus doesn't answer our prayers, and so we're tempted to walk away from faith, or at least not engage like we used to. And what's interesting is our hiding is actually preventing our healing. Experienced this in an interesting way this week at my house. We got a puppy a few weeks ago. Love my puppy, except he did try to eat my sandals, and we almost had to give him up for adoption, but he's good. And so this week he was out in the backyard. He was playing. I said, hey, time to come in. I open our back door, and he runs as fast as his little puppy legs will take him. And he's running in. And what you have to know at our house, our patio sits a little bit lower than our back door. So there's a little bit of a step you have to jump up. And as he's running as fast as he can, he jumps up, and I can almost see it happening like a train wreck in slow motion. He hits his paw right on the door and immediately starts limping and screaming and wailing. I don't know if you've heard a dog wail in agony. We found out a very important thing in that moment, that I'm the only one in my family equipped to deal with a crisis. One of my kids literally just walked out the front door, did not know what to do. Now, in that moment, there's only one thing you can do to bring healing, right? You have to pick up the dog. You have to examine the part that hurts. By the way, is that going to be painful for him? Probably, but is it the only way we can diagnose and bring healing? Absolutely. The good ending of that story is he's fine, all right? He just bruised his foot. He is back, giving everybody all the trouble they can handle. But the only way that we can deal with the healing in our life is we have to allow Jesus to go to the parts that hurt. And too many of us are sitting and hiding and wondering why Jesus hasn't showed up. Now, here's the beautiful thing about Jesus, though. He doesn't just say, fine, Mary, if that's what you want, that's on you. He continues to pursue her. He's making his way to her. Martha runs home and says, Mary, Jesus is here. He wants to see you. And so Mary, to her credit, she gets up. She goes out to meet Jesus. She's ready to let him have it. Jesus, if you had been here, this wouldn't have happened. And you can hear the heartache and pain in her voice. And then Jesus says, show me where you laid him. Take me to the place you buried him. It's interesting. Jesus has to go back to the place of pain in order for there to be healing in her life. Sometimes we have to go back to the place of pain. Sometimes that means we got to spend time in counseling, working through stuff. Sometimes that means we just have to be honest with Jesus about our frustration and pain. I think sometimes we're not honest with Jesus because, we're just not sure if he can handle it, if we're just gut level honest. Can I just tell you something? Jesus is bigger than your doubts and fears. He's not afraid of your disappointment, your anger, your bitterness. He welcomes it. I think for some of us, we have to have those open, honest conversations with God. I don't understand why you weren't there, but I'm trusting you. I need you to show up now. And so she does take Jesus to the grave. Jesus prays, and then Lazarus walks out of the grave. I mean, this dude still had his burial cloths on. It's like a scene out of The Mummy. He is back to life. It said that he stunk, like his flesh had been rotting, and now he is back to life. That's all the background for the passage that we want to look at today. Because in John chapter 12, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus want to thank Jesus for resurrecting Lazarus from the dead. That's where we're going to pick up John chapter 12, starting in verse 1. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany where Lazarus was, the one Jesus had raised from the dead. So they gave a dinner for him there. Martha was serving them, and Lazarus was the one of those reclining at the table with him. Then Mary took a pound of perfume, pure and expensive nard, anointed Jesus' feet, and wiped his feet with her hair. So the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. Then one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, who was about to betray him, said, why wasn't this perfume sold for 300 denarii and given to the poor? He didn't say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. He was in charge of the money bag and would steal part of what was put in it. Jesus answered, leave her alone. She has kept it for the day of my burial. For you will always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me. Talk about an interesting dinner party. Mary, Martha, Lazarus, they want to have a dinner in Jesus' honor. Now, I have to think that probably word about Lazarus' resurrection had gotten out. Do you think other people heard about this? I don't think they had to post it on their Instagram stories for people to hear about the guy who is dead and now he's back to life, right? If people hear about Harry Potter, who was the boy who lived, we can hear about Lazarus, who is the man who lives even though he died. And it's interesting the details we're told about this dinner. Jesus is sitting around the table and we're told Martha is hard at work. Now, that's a little Bible humor because the first time we meet Mary and Martha, what's happening? Jesus shows up at their home. Martha's doing all the work, the cooking, the cleaning, the preparing, make sure everything's just right for Jesus. And her sister Mary is sitting at Jesus' feet doing absolutely nothing. Now, I know we just got done with Thanksgiving. I'm sure there was a moment in your house when you were cooking the turkey and the stuffing and everything else, and you looked at somebody who is sitting watching football, and a little part of you wanted to punch them in the face, right? Martha's frustrated with her sister because she's working. Jesus, tell her to help me. He says, actually, Mary has chosen the better thing. Interesting, Jesus is back in her house, and what is she doing? She's back to work. Now, the funniest part to me is Lazarus is reclining at the table. You know why this is funny? These whole 2 chapters revolve around Lazarus. The dude is the biggest lump on a log in this entire story. He doesn't do anything. He dies and comes back to life. Then he's laying down again at the dinner table. He's just there. And then at this dinner, Mary walks in with an expensive jar of perfume. Now, what we find out later is this jar of perfume was worth about 1 year's salary. Now, I don't know what your salary is, but can you imagine in my house if my wife came home and I'm like, man, that perfume smells great. Is that new? And she said, yeah. And I said, oh, how much would it cost? About $70,000. And I hope you kept the receipt because we ain't keeping that perfume. It's like, it seems like a very random thing for Mary to have access to. But what you realize in that culture is this was probably something that was passed down throughout their family generations. This was a financial safety net. So if they ever hit hard times, they wouldn't have to sell the house or sell the land or go into indentured servitude. They had this to fall back on. So when Mary comes, she brings this perfume, and she doesn't just put a little on her hand and rub Jesus' feet. She doesn't like anoint him on the forehead. She breaks the whole thing open and dumps it all over Jesus. She's taking her safety net, everything she has, she's giving all to Jesus. Why? Because she had just seen him raise her brother from the dead. And if she can trust him to do that, there is nothing she can't trust Jesus with. She gives him everything. And then it said like the most no-duh statement in this whole story. It says, and the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. Of course it was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. When we first got married, one of my first jobs, I was a high school custodian. Because I was the new guy, they gave me the honor of cleaning the athletic wing of the building. And there are a lot of stories I have. I've seen some things, people. But the worst part is, every day I walked into the boys' locker room, there was a haze of Axe body spray resting above the lockers. And I worked there for over a year, and every single time it felt like I was getting punched in the face with Axe body spray. I have PTSD to this day. Like, can you imagine? You break this entire bottle of perfume, everyone smells it. Everyone knows something has just happened. This beautiful thing is taking place, though. Mary is giving Jesus her everything, but now everybody else takes notice. Do people smell the worship in your life? Are people impacted by the way you have given everything to Jesus? Does the fragrance of worship fill your home? And of course, Judas is there. He notices, and he complains. Why didn't you sell this? We could have made a year's worth of money, and we could have really helped the poor. See, what she sees as worshipful, Judas sees as wasteful. This is extravagant. This is too much. But he didn't care about the poor. He just cared about getting access to the money for himself. See, what was given to Jesus is something that he really wanted. It's a reminder that the enemy doesn't want your money, but he does want your worship. See, a lot of times we get caught up in all of these other things, these experiences, these things we can own, all this stuff. And those are all great distractions to give our time, attention, and adoration to things other than Jesus. By the way, I think we could say the same about Jesus. Jesus doesn't need your money. Jesus is not like, oh, they didn't tithe. I guess we can't help the poor this much. Like, Jesus is not waiting on us at all. Jesus asked us to be generous because he knows that wherever our treasure is, that's where our heart is. Right? Like, I grew up thinking that what that meant is when I love something, I'm going to spend money on it. And that's true, but that's not what Jesus says. He said what you spend money on, all of a sudden that has your attention. You may not know anything about spinal cord stimulation, but if you invest in Globus, you care very much that they hit their quarterly numbers, right? All of a sudden, stuff you never cared about, you are insanely invested in because that's where your money is, right? Jesus doesn't need your money, but he does want your heart. And so sometimes he may ask us to make sacrifices so that we can open ourselves up to worship him with all that we have. What's interesting to me is at this point, it's evident that Mary has peace, right? But she didn't have peace in the waiting. You ever have these moments with your kids? Like sometimes I tell them, I want you to learn from my mistakes. I want you to see what happened to me so that you can go off and make all own new mistakes for yourself. Here, I think we can look at Mary, and I think the same hope, peace, and joy she experienced at the dinner table is the same she could have experienced in the waiting. The question is, how do we experience that peace? A couple thoughts come to mind. The first one is this: if we're going to have peace in the waiting, we have to reflect with appreciation. Like we have to look back in our past at all the times God was faithful, even when we felt like he wasn't going to show up. We look back with great appreciation. By the way, have you ever noticed that what you're looking for, you typically find? Or like I noticed a couple weeks ago, they redesigned the Toyota Tacomas. Now they look like the Tundras. It's like my dream truck. And now I see them everywhere. And now my heart has, if anyone's looking for a Christmas gift for me, just feel free. But like if you start looking for something, you're going to see it everywhere. Too many times we're looking for what we can complain about, looking for the things that have gone wrong, looking for all the difficult things that happened to us this past year. What if instead we started looking for all the ways God was faithful? I'll be honest with you, not that I would lie to you anyway. But this past year has been really tough for me. The year started with us putting one of our dogs down. We went through difficult seasons, even here at church. Like it felt like I was close to burnout. There are times with marriage and parenting that felt like it was stuck and wheels were spinning. And it would be really easy to sit at the end of the year and say, man, what a crappy year 2025 was. But if we're faithful to take a moment and reflect back with appreciation, then all of a sudden we get to see things like, this was the best summer vacation our family has ever taken together. Such sweet memories and great time. I was on sabbatical and we got to do so many things that we never experienced before. Actually, me feeling like we were carrying the weight on our shoulders here at church is what led us to being able to bring on Adam Michalski and Greg Tellison to staff. Like, what great blessings that they have been to our ministry team. Like, we have had so much to celebrate here at Bridgepoint over this past year. I mean, Giving Hope was yesterday. Giving Hope is my baby. All right, this was something that we started 8 years ago. For the first 5 years, I basically ran the whole thing by myself. I had somebody who was a helper, but I micromanaged, right? Because this is my baby. It needs to go the way it needs to. The last couple years, we tried to build a team. This was the very first year. I had no responsibility. We had an amazing team who did everything. I got CC'd on an email once every other week, so I was in the loop. But I showed up. People asked me questions. I cannot help you. And you know what the amazing thing is? It was the best one we've ever done. We served 11 families with over 30 different kids. And that's because of your generosity. We had over 50 volunteers in and out of this building yesterday serving these families. There were tears that were cried. There were lives that were changed, all because of your generosity. That's something worth celebrating. In fact, one of the things that we do is at the end of Giving Hope, there's a local foster ministry called Turnaround Kids, and they said they're serving about 15 kids right now, but they think up to 25 will show up on Christmas, so they come in to get gifts. And when Mario, who's one of the heads of Turnaround Kids, came in and he saw the setup, which, by the way, this is set up after we already had 11 families shop, he looked and he said, Matt, you guys are crazy. This is wild. This is all, like crazy in a good way. Like, can you believe how generous your church is? Like how you are blessing the people around you. Like, I'm blown away by your generosity. This year, when I started at Bridgepoint, things were a whole lot different. It was a financial struggle at the very beginning. We were giving 0.01% of our budget away to missions, okay? Not 1%, not 0.1%, 0.01%. This past year, was doing so good. We gave over $84,000 up to this point. We still have 3 weeks left. We give 14% of your giving away to missions. By the way, you've given more than our budget. So if I really wanted to fudge the numbers, I could tell you it's like 20% of the budget, but I'm not going to do that to you. 14% of your giving has gone straight to missions efforts all over the world. We've seen so many incredible things. One of our partners is GHNI, Global Hope Network International. And over the past year, we've done some amazing projects with them. We've helped fund this podcast that they started where they're interviewing world leaders. There's some incredible, incredible things. So I look back at this past year, and even though there were moments that were difficult, we have much to celebrate as a church. So even when the world feels crazy and we feel like God hasn't shown up to do the thing we wanted him to do, we can reflect back with great appreciation. But I also think we need to look forward and expect with anticipation. Because I think whatever God did this past year, if you had told me this time last year all that God would do through our church, I would have been blown away. And I cannot wait to see what he's going to do in this coming year. I mean, when we give in just a few moments, this offering, 50% of it is going to go straight to missions efforts off the top. Then we take another 25% we put in savings for other ministry efforts throughout the year. And this year, we're actually doing something a little different. We're narrowing down the partners that we're supporting. Not because the partners are bad or anything else. We're narrowing our focus so we can have an even greater impact. So here's what that means. We have 2 global and 2 local partners that we are supporting. So let's talk about the global partners. The first one is GHNI. I've already talked about them a little bit. The beautiful thing is over the years, they've gone into these remote areas. We bought them a van one time. They're going to villages that we could never get to on our own, and they're there doing ministry. They're helping get clean water. We have put solar power lights in places that don't have access to electricity. We put toilets in homes in India that did not have toilets before. But here's the crazy thing. All the work that we've been supporting has been done in Southeast Asia. And the people we're supporting are moving from Southeast Asia to London. Why? Because they've done such a good job raising up that local community that they are no longer needed. Right? That local community is now able to not only sustain itself, but now they're helping other communities around. The very thing they set out to do a few years ago, it has been accomplished. And so now they're moving to London. Why London? Because Trey has been accepted and is currently enrolled at Oxford. If you ever meet Trey, he is like the Dos Equis most interesting man in the world. Like, I love Trey so much. And the reason he's going to Oxford is because through GHNI, he's literally meeting with heads of state all over the world, these developing nations where all the community development stuff that they've been doing for the past few years, now entire nations are adopting this strategy so they can help their communities come up. This is efforts, by the way, that you have been supporting at a very significant level over the past several years. We're going to continue to support them financially. The other global partner is Destino del Reino in Seguatepeque, Honduras. It's a children's home and school that we support financially, but the best part is for the last 3 summers, we have sent mission trip teams over there. This past summer was maybe the smallest team we've ever sent and maybe the best team that we've ever sent. Now, I'm not knocking on any of the teams that went before, but they just had such amazing stories. God showed up in some incredible ways, and so we're looking forward to sending a team back this year. See, here's the thing. Bridgepoint, you guys have done awesome at financially supporting, but we don't want to just cut checks. We don't want to just invest money. We want to invest our lives in places. And so we want to send a team over this summer. So we've had a couple interest meetings already. The deadline to sign up for the trip is in January, but we have one more interest team meeting that's coming up next Sunday after this second service. And I would encourage you, if God has given you any interest at all, show up at this meeting. My heart as your pastor is at least one point in your life you would go on an international mission trip. And here's the beautiful thing about this one. We've been doing it enough, and we have enough relationship with Destino now that we almost have it down to a science. We always say the greatest ability is flexibility, because when you go on a mission trip to another country, you can't ever anticipate everything, but we kind of know what to expect and what we're doing. It's also one of the most affordable mission trips you'll ever go on, and we want to help you with your fundraising. I know some people, we feel weird about fundraising. We're like, well, I should be able to pay for the whole thing. But even if you could, the reason we fundraise is because we want to invite other people to be a part of the trip. I say all the time, sometimes your money goes places you cannot go. And I might not be able to go on the trip, but I would love to support you because I want to be a part of the work that God is doing over in Honduras. And so we have that coming up next week. You might look back this time next year and say, man, I didn't even think I was going to have an opportunity to do that. And look what God has done. Those are our 2 global partners. Our 2 local partners. One we're continuing to work with is Must Ministries. You guys are so generous. We gave almost $15,000 to Must Ministries this year. Some of that was special gifts. I told you we gave several thousand a few weeks ago when the SNAP benefits had rolled over. And when that happened, the head of Must Ministries sent a handwritten note to our church thanking us for our generosity, and he even included his personal cell phone number on there. So I don't know, maybe it's just a fake number. Who knows? But all to say, your generosity is making waves and an impact in our community. But again, we don't want to just invest money. We want to invest our lives. So I met with Must recently, and we're working together to essentially create a menu of local serve opportunities. Because my heart for us is that when we enter into this next life group season, every life group will pick one activity to partner with one of our ministry partners and actually go and serve in some capacity right here in Cherokee County. I think we have great opportunities coming ahead. But the second partner, brand new partner, it's a group called ESP, or Extra Special People. They work with families who have kids with special needs. And this is so close to my heart because families who have kids with special needs are the number one group that will not come to church because churches are not equipped to handle that. And listen, if somebody wants to give $10 million for Above and Beyond, we will equip our church for it. I promise you. We got vision for days. If you give me $10 million, we're going to have 8 pickleball courts, a full court basketball court outside. We're going to have a coffee. We have vision for years, all right? But here's what we can do. They may never darken the doors of our church, but we have an opportunity to go to where they are and serve them. So what does ESP do? They do a number of things. One of them is they host monthly family meals where they have a meal for about 30 or 40 families in the metro Atlanta area, and they come with their kids and their families, and they have food that's provided for them, and they have people who are serving them and building relationships. They also do monthly club nights where the families can drop off their kids with special needs, and they're going to have a great time, and the parents get a parents' night out. In the summertime, they do a day camp from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. They can always use volunteers for that. And here's the crazy thing. ESP is not explicitly a Christian organization, but the founder and the head leaders, they're people who follow Jesus. And I asked them when I met with them recently, I said, how many churches are partnering with you? And she said there are a few that help out from time to time, but we don't have any official church partnerships. So we may not be the biggest church in the world, but we have an opportunity to make one of the biggest impacts in an area of great need. So listen, I would love to tell you, we never set a financial goal for Above and Beyond, so in a few weeks, I'm going to tell you what you guys gave and what we were able to do with it. But I would love to be able to say, hey, not only have we provided a couple of the family meal food, but now we have some of our life groups are actually going and serving those meals and building those relationships with other people. We have such great opportunity in front of us this year. So we have the 2 global, the 2 local. The other 25% of that offering, it actually goes to improvements right here at Bridgepoint. This past year, we were able to finally finish our kids' ministry renovation. And do you know why that was possible? Number 1, your generosity. Number 2, Miss Jennifer Edwards. If you know Jen Edwards, she is my assistant. And when I was going on sabbatical, I handed her everything, and she did more in 8 weeks what most people will do in 8 years. I mean, she just is a go-getter. She got it done. Now, there's one last area of our church that has not seen an upgrade, and it's this room right here. So there's a few things, like for example, the lights right here, those are not stage lights. We're blessed to have them, but it would be nice to have some lights that were designed to do the thing that we want them to do. The cameras, if you guys have to stream online because you aren't able to make it here, those cameras were already obsolete when we bought them in the first place almost 6 years ago. So we would love to update those. We're getting to the point where we have to order more chairs because services are getting full. We would love to do that. There's a number of different things we want to do to make all our tech stuff more volunteer friendly. And so again, we have lots of vision. We always go at the pace of our generosity. And as we sit here today and we look forward with great expectation for what God's going to do, I say this humbly, I don't know what he's going to do, but I'm so excited to see what 2026 is going to hold. I have one more thing for us, but I do want to leave time open for Q&A. So just remember our guidelines for our questions. Questions, not comments, relatively quick and to the point and relevant to what we're talking about today. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand, and Mr. Adam will be around with the microphone. Going once, going twice. All right. If we reflect back with great appreciation and we're expecting with great anticipation, there's only one more thing to do, and that's to respond with adoration. And so we've been telling you for 6 weeks now to be praying and thinking. We don't want you to be compelled to give by manipulation or anything else. Hopefully you have one of these envelopes inside the envelope, there is a card. On the card, there are 3 things. It says, what's one thing I'm thankful for in 2025? The second, what's one thing I am believing God for in 2026? And the last one is, here's what I'm giving to Above and Beyond this year. Now, if you came prepared to give your gift, you can put it right in this envelope along with the card. It's open to give online as well. There's ways you can give stock or whatever else. That's all above my pay grade. Some people do it for tax benefits. I don't think I make enough to care about tax benefits. So anyway, if you have questions on that, talk to your financial advisor. But in just a moment, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pray. And I'm going to ask you to get with your family, and I want you to fill out that card. I want to reflect back with great appreciation for what God has done. We want to look forward, expecting what God is going to do in the year that's ahead. And then as a part of our worship during our communion time, I'll ask that you just lay this envelope on the stage. And as we see these envelopes, what I hope that you see is they are a reminder to us of all the ways that God has been faithful to you and to you and to you and to you and to me. And then also that there are things that God's going to do in your life, in your life, in your life, and in my life this year that we have no idea is about to happen. And we're just excited to be a part of what he has for us. So in just a moment, I'm going to pray. Our communion stations will be open like they are every week. And the questions to consider in your time with Jesus, they're no surprise. Number 1, what am I thankful for in 2025? Number 2, what am I believing God for in 2026? So would you join your heads with me in prayer? Jesus, we're so thankful. We're thankful that even in the seasons of waiting, you are still faithful to us. I just pray for all the people right now who are in a season where it feels like they're being stretched. They feel anxious. There's hurt. There's pain. That'd be in those moments that you would reach into those areas and you would bring healing into our lives. I thank you for all that you've done in and through our church family this past year. And as we give today, we just pray your blessings over these offerings, that they would be used to further your kingdom work here, that you would bring heaven to earth each and every day, and that as we give, Jesus, this act of generosity would be something you use to make us more like you. It's in your name I pray. Amen. As you feel led, our communion stations are open, and the altar is open for gifts as well.